thank everybody for being here with us today. I firstly just want to thank our partners in government, our leaders, our Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, our Borough President Antonio Reynoso, Bedford Garden tenants, the tenants here who have been organizing and pushing back, and our partners in the tenant movement like St. Nick's Alliance and UNO, and of course Los Sures and La Lucha. And I want to give a special shout out to Communities Resist. Yes. The team at CORE has been helping to fight for and represent the tenants here and make sure that our interests are looked out for. And I want to thank Nicole from Brad Lander's office, our controller, who's been helping us in partnership on this as well. What Krause is trying to do here at Bedford Gardens is unconscionable. Yeah. This has been a bastion of deep, affordable housing for almost 50 years. But if Krause gets its way, it will be unaffordable in just 3 years. They are trying to impose an 80% increase on the rents here at Bedford Gardens. Shame. That ain't right. It is not right. Think about a family now that's paying $1,000 in rent a month. If Krause had its way, they'd be paying $1,800 in just 3 years. The family paying $1,700 today would be paying $2,500 in rent in just 3 years. For the retired worker living on Social Security, there's no way that she could continue to call Bedford Gardens home. For the family with 6 kids on a single income, there's no way that they could continue to call Bedford Gardens home. Affordable housing is the greatest treasure that we have in New York City. We have to do everything in our power to protect it. And so our message tonight could not be clearer to Mayor Adams and to the Housing and Preservation and Development Agency. Reject this increase. Not decrease it, not cut it down, reject it. It is wrong. What Krause is trying to do to the working people of Bedford Gardens is wrong. And these elected officials, this community, these tenants, we are going to fight and fight and fight until we win. Am I right? Before we hear from our elected officials, I'd like to bring up one of the tenants who had been doing so much organizing here to fight for our rights. When we were out just a couple weeks ago knocking on every door in this building, she and her son were with us. When we were organizing tenant meetings last week, she and her family have been with us. And so I want to bring up Zoraida Olivo to share a few words about their experience. Thank you, Zoraida.
Hi, my name is Zoraida Olivo. I've been here for over 34 years. I live here with my husband, my son, and my daughter. We work, we report all our income, so we pay market rent, the surcharge, everything else that we don't qualify for. We have to decide if this increase goes through, we will have to choose between sending my daughter to college, which she's already there in Oswego. We don't qualify for financial aid. So we will have to decide between home and a college education for her. And I think this is very unfair for a working family of 4.
Thank you, Zoraida.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I will tell you, Krause has tried this before, and every time you can count on our Congresswoman stepping up, leading the charge, and fighting back. And with Nydia Velázquez at the helm, you know we're going to win. So without further ado, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me thank Lincoln Restler and, of course, our Borough President Antonio Reynoso, Community Resist, and every other community organization that is here, and to you, gracias. Because this is how we win. We win by organizing. And a day like today, where you could be home cooking a meal, you're here fighting for your rights. You know, we are facing an affordability crisis in New York. It's not only on housing, it's on healthcare, it's on education, it's on food. And people are discussing, and the mayor is discussing, that the population loss of New York recently and how much money we're going to lose because of that. Well, this is the answer. Right. People cannot stay. Even those who are working the working poor, the middle class, they cannot afford this type of rent increases. And let me say clear, let me send a message quite loud and clear to the mayor of New York, to the HPD commissioner, and I spoke to him just recently. I told them, this proposal is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. We reject it and it cannot stand. And as the senior member on the Financial Services Committee and the only member who sits on the Housing Subcommittee, I will use every tool at my disposal to work against this type of outrageous, unconscionable proposal. But it's going to take all of us. Right. You know, we have to show up. Because when we show up in force, people will listen.
That's right.
And they need to know that we are here and we are going to stay here.
Yes, yes, yes.
So thank you so much to the mayor. And by the way, we reach out to HUD. We say you could do an assessment of the P&A, but I can tell you that maintenance cannot be at the expense or on the backs of working people.
That's right.
That is the landlord's responsibility.
That's right.
This is not free housing. This is working families. They pay their rent, and when they get subsidies that are paid into the landlord by the federal government. So this is not a free ride. And I'm sorry, Kraus, you've been here before, and I've been here before, and today I'm telling you, you're wrong.
There we go. The borough president for all of Brooklyn grew up in this neighborhood in Williamsburg, and he has lived in Kraus housing. He is a champion for affordable housing, and we are lucky to have him here with us today, Antonio Reynoso.
All right, thank you so much. So, as the council member just said, I did grow up in Kraus housing. And there was a time in my life growing up in Kraus that I was extremely proud, deeply proud, because I thought the housing that they had was extraordinary. For a long time, I didn't know I even lived in subsidized housing. I felt there was a privilege to live in Kraus. And then I became an elected official. And so all the machinations in the background as to how they operate, and it turned my faith and my love that I had for where I grew up into despair. Because I'm standing behind people that live in Kraus developments that might not be here too long. Zoraida, who was a teacher of mine when I was in daycare, lives here. This truly affects the people in this community in a way that we can't quantify through rents. But another thing that really upsets me is that there is supposedly a housing crisis in the city of New York. That we have almost 70,000 people in homeless shelters. Right. Do you know where those 70,000 people come from? It's from situations like this. Right. Do the rent increases of 25, 25, and 10, and what you're going to see is that 1,000 people from here are going to have to go to shelters. They're going to exacerbate the crisis that we have in homelessness. The mayor has an opportunity to stop families from having to enter into the homeless shelters by stepping up and ensuring that we don't do those ridiculous rent increases, that we don't support those rent increases for Kraus. That's how he can stop this housing crisis. 25% increases. Can you believe that? Every single year. There's a reason why the Rent Guidelines Board has rent-stabilized buildings that increase on average 1%, 2%, and 3%. It's because the state came together and said, hey, these increases seem unjust. These increases seem scary. A family would need to find $800 in extra income every single month to stay out of a homeless shelter system. So they developed a law that protected them against that. And here in this Mitchell Lama, they don't have that law. But they have us. And they have these tenants in the background. And they have Communities Resist. They have UNO. They have La Lucha. They have St. Nick's. They have Los Sures. We're going to show what the power of community can do. But to Kraus, who can still save its reputation here, who can still be a partner in allowing for these tenants that have called home their partners, the people that they've cared for so long, they can show up. and do better
That's right.
than price gouging, than increasing these rents at that amount. They wouldn't dare let it happen to their families. Why let it happen to ours? So I'm standing here with the elected officials. Thank you so much to Council Member Lincoln Restler, who's out here knocking on doors, meeting with the tenants, understanding, building empathy, understanding what these folks are going through, and having us here today on a rainy day to let Cross know that we will not accept it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Every elected official who represents this community is standing in full solidarity with the tenants of Bedford Gardens, and we are committed to fighting back. One of those leaders, my dear friend, our Assembly Member, Emily Gallagher.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out and supporting us and the tenants and all of the tenants in this district who are up in the same fights against predatory real estate. This owner has a long history of these tricks, right? Using self-dealing to justify an unthinkable rent increase. The owner uses his own companies to perform every service at the complex and charges inflated prices for every contract, creating the appearance of an increasing cost that requires a rent increase. The truth is that according to an independent audit performed in 2021, the owner is making $2 million in net cash income off of this development and at least $1.5 million in profit. The Mitchell-Lama program was not created to be a cash cow. It was created to build permanently affordable housing for New Yorkers. A 43% rent increase flies in the face of the purpose of this program. This housing is meant to be permanently affordable, and allowing such a massive rent increase while only legitimizes the self-dealing and profiteering that Kraus management is engaging in. Many of these residents are on fixed incomes and would be displaced in a rental market that is all too unaffordable. The median income in this district in Williamsburg has risen to an unbelievable $4,000 a month. We cannot allow this to continue. It is unconscionable, and I'm very proud that we have a team of elected officials who stand here with me and great community organizations who stand here and great partners at the federal level. We are going to fight this, and we are going to fight every rent increase that is like this. Everybody is on notice. This is what you're going to be facing if you try to mess with Williamsburg and Greenpoint. Thank you.
And we are very fortunate in this community to have community lawyers, to have attorneys that fight for our tenants. And Adam Myers has been out here with us as the Director of Litigation at Communities Resist, knocking on doors, educating, organizing, and empowering the tenants here at Bedford Gardens. Love for you to speak a few words. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I know it's a dark and cold and rainy day, but I am sure that there is no place that we would rather be than right here, because this is where we need to be. This is where we need to fight for housing justice in this community. You all know that we are in the middle of a housing crisis. We're breaking rent records. We are breaking records in terms of homelessness. It is crazy out there, and no place has seen this more than Williamsburg, where for all the new housing that we're building, we continue to see our long-term residents, people of color, low-income folks, forced out of their homes and out of their communities. To the extent that the old Williamsburg remains, it is in places like this, like in Bedford Gardens. These folks have been here for 40 years, have called this place home, and have built this neighborhood that now, the world wants to come join us at. If they were not here, where would they be? Where would they go? And the proposal that Kraus has offered here, that they are asking for from the city, is to increase these rents not just by 25% this year, not just by an additional 25% next year, but by another 15% the year after, for a total of 80%. For folks that are paying 30% of their income right now, they're going to be paying well more than half in 3 years if this proposal goes through. And if already they're paying 50% of their income in rent, it's all going to rent in 3 years, and that's just not possible. How are you going to eat? How are you going to send your kids to school? It's not possible. If we are going to preserve this community, we need to start with Bedford Gardens, And the way that we do that is by fighting. You know, this is not a done deal. The landlord has made an ask, but the city's not just going to grant it. The city has to hear from us. The city has to hear from you guys about how this is going to affect you and your families and your communities. And if enough of us speak up and we speak our truth on this matter, I believe we can win this. And we're gonna fight, and we're gonna win, and you know, we're gonna stay here. We're gonna keep our homes. And so, thank you all for coming out.
So we've got a public hearing with HPD in 25 minutes where we all need to go and testify. But if folks from the press have a couple questions, we're happy to answer.
Housing